Hello and welcome back to Stream City Radio, streamcity.org, Stream City Sports. This is College Drive, and we're going to look back at the playoff teams from last year, teams that just missed, and just kind of impressions where we think they'll be heading into next year, because I think you got kind of a mixed bag. We'll know more once we make it through spring practice, see what the rosters really look like. This is basically, just based off of opinion. At this point, it's literally all it is. And we'll start with, in the Big Ten. Indiana coming off 2 fantastic years. Can they maintain that? How much of that goes away with their quarterback leaving? Because I think for what they do, he was kind of he just fit really, really well. Not to say he's a system quarterback, but he fit that system very well. But it's a system that I think what he did in college translates very well to the NFL. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him have a fantastic career. I think the kid brings a great attitude. So we'll see how that goes. His brother transferred out, is now at Georgia Tech. That we'll talk about that come ACC time. But the question I think really on a lot of people's mind is, will Indiana be back? And I don't think their team is going to repeat. I think they're a team that can be very good again in the Big Ten. I think they're a playoff team going into next year. Cignetti does a really good job. And the reality is, outside of the very top crust of the Big Ten, I'm not sure what there is after that. And, is USC trending up? I'm not sure. I do like Indiana. Ohio State's going to be right back. They lost some key guys. But they're much like Georgia and Alabama and some of the other teams. Well, that is kind of the list. They just reload. And they'll be right back. I'm not a huge Ryan Day fan. I don't think he brings anything special to the table. But what I think he does do is he surrounds himself by great coaches, which is what you do if you're going to be a great head coach. So people can doubt Ryan Day. I don't think he is some spectacular game day coach. But he gets the right guys around him, and they do a fantastic job up there at Ohio State. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be back in the playoffs. I think you've got a couple teams. You've got Oregon. I don't see them going anywhere, although what have they been? They feel very much like a paper tiger to me. Great regular seasons, and then they're flaring out spectacularly come playoff time. And now, granted, both times they lost to the eventual, national champion. There's something to be said for that. But at the same time, it was ugly. It wasn't particularly close either time. So, a big win over James Madison and a win against the Texas Tech team that had never been to the playoffs before. The Texas Tech win's a good one. Don't get me wrong. Texas Tech was a really, really good football team last year. But we know what happens to teams their first year in the playoffs if they're playing somebody with playoff experience, and it's ugly. It virtually is for everybody, and that's what happened in that ball game last year. So is Oregon a playoff team again? Quite probably, I would say, because who else is really is USC trending up? I don't have a lot of faith that that's going to happen. Michigan, I think, is taking a big step back. Penn State is, how good is Iowa State really going to play in the Big Ten? We'll find out. Because if Penn State makes any waves at all, don't talk to me about the Big Ten being better than the Big 12, because you basically have a Big 12 team that just got plopped down in Happy Valley and is basically the Penn State Cyclones. So I just don't. The transition, everything. Maybe Matt Campbell can come in there and get more done. I don't know. I think to me that's a 3-horse race, and I think the gap to everybody else is pretty big. And I think now that next group's going to be competitive. I think Iowa and, USC and, I don't think somebody may end up being a fourth playoff team out of the Big Ten, but it's not going to be because they're great. It's going to be because it's situational, is the way I see it. I don't see anybody. I could see those three teams all being back. Maybe USC. I guess that would be your next best bet to have somebody who made a run. I haven't looked at schedules yet to really see how that plays into all of this. It's the problem with 18 teams in a conference. You could avoid just about everybody that's any good. So we'll see how that plays out. Once again, it's not a coaching staff that makes me go, yeah, these guys are going to get them wins where they shouldn't get them. I just don't see that. I haven't seen that in the entire time he's been at USC. So that would be my thought. I think your three teams from the Big Ten are likely probably back. With USC maybe, without, like I said, this is done with no research. This is just feelings coming off of last year, what we know's happened in the offseason. And USC, the next best team maybe make a run. Maybe Washington. Washington had some good moments last year, but they just seem to have some deficiencies that I don't know that they've taken care of. Moving on to the ACC. Is Miami going to be back? I don't know. Who's your quarterback? I don't think you gain anything with Cristobal and his staff on the sidelines. There's nothing there that impresses me about Miami. So you got to assume they're going to find a way to lose a couple games they're not supposed to. Are they the wrong teams again? Because let's face it, it took some things had to fall their way for them to get in playoffs last year. They made a great run. Now, granted, they could have easily been out in week one. Texas Tech had the ball with a chance to beat them. Texas A&M, sorry, Aggie fans, had the ball with a chance to beat them, or at least tie them. Ole Miss had the chance to go down and beat them. They managed to survive both of those, and they had the ball with a chance to beat Indiana. So it was a great run by Miami. I'm just not really ready to say the U's back yet because I don't have a ton of faith in their coaching staff. We'll see who they get at quarterback. They, like the rest of the teams on this list, have shown the ability to spend money. They will spend it. And just don't know who else in the ACC is really out. Louisville, maybe. But they seem to be trending up. Georgia Tech, maybe, although they lost their, what should have been their starting quarterback has now gone to Florida, so you got some question marks there, although I really like what Brent Key's building at Georgia Tech. I don't know who else is a real threat there. SMU quietly keeps winning out there in Dallas, and how much with the change in offensive coordinator, as much as we may not like him, Petrino can coach offense. How will that work with Belichick at North Carolina? That's kind of an interesting question. Will Virginia be back? I don't have a lot of faith in that, although I think there's a possibility. I think Miami's probably back because they were there last year. I don't know. I think the ACC could potentially get two teams in, but right now, I don't know who those teams would be. I think it's a bit of a reach to think that that's going to happen. But right now I would say Miami is as good a pick as anybody coming to ACC. Maybe Louisville, and I tell you, watch out for Georgia Tech. I know they've got questions now with who the quarterback's going to be. I just have a ton of respect for Brent Key. And when I look around at the coaching in the ACC, he's in the top handful of coaches, in my opinion, in the ACC for what he does. If you gave me the exact same roster with Mario Cristobal and Brent Key, I'll take Brent Key 10 days out of 10. Matter of fact, I'll take him 11 days out of 10. I think he's doing a fantastic job at Georgia Tech. He gets the culture there. He's a product of that culture. And he is another coach that demands excellence. He just does. And as you see they're continuing to improve their recruiting. I just think it's going to get better and better at Georgia Tech. I think they're not going anywhere. I think they're going to keep getting better. Once again, I haven't looked at the schedule, see how that flushes out. But if I had to pick a dark horse in that conference, because I think Virginia's going to get talked about. I think SMU will get talked about. Miami obviously will get talked about. Clemson, we're not even mentioning Clemson and Dabo up there. You know, people steady throwing dirt on Dabo. We'll see. We'll see how that all plays out. There's been some bad moments, but there's been some signs that maybe things could return a little bit back to where they were. And you're not playing in the SEC where you've got a bunch of behemoths in front of you. It would not have taken a lot for Clemson to have been the best team in the ACC last year. It's just the gap wasn't that big. I just don't think, as good as Miami's run was last year, I don't think the gap between Miami and the next 5 or 6 teams in the conference is very big. I think the gap in the Big Ten is much bigger between that top 3 and their next group than it is between Miami and the next 5 or 6 teams in the ACC. So that one we could see flip, I think, in 2026. Looking at the SEC, I think Georgia is going to be loaded again next year. Texas A&M seem to be definitely trending up. Texas is going to be everybody's team to beat with Arch Manning coming back. And let's face it, his play improved massively as the season went on last year. And if they can put an offensive line in front of him that keeps him from getting his head handed to him every third play, the ceiling is very high for the Longhorns. So, to me, that's them and Georgia are going to be the 2 teams to beat in the SEC next year. Texas A&M, if they can find good quarterback play, because that was the problem last year, and they had issues stopping the run. Those 2 things will get you beat in the SEC a lot. The schedule, without looking at it, has to be more difficult than it was last year. You could not have handwritten a script to dodge more of the big opponents in the conference last year than what Texas A&M did. And I think it hurt them at the end of the season. They get hammered by Texas and then lose at home to Miami, and was not a great performance by the offense for sure. But even while they had a chance to tie that at the end of the game, it didn't really feel that close. So Ole Miss made the longest run of anybody in the SEC, but I need to see it from a new coaching staff. I think that hurt them in the Miami game. You had guys that were there for the Georgia game that weren't there for the Miami game. I think that came home to roost. I think had Lane Kiffin stayed at Ole Miss, they play for a national title, and not necessarily so much because of Lane Kiffin, because I don't love Lane Kiffin on game day. Loved Lane Kiffin Monday through Friday. And, hey, nobody's got a better Twitter game and talks more smack than Lane Kiffin, but on game day, he makes some interesting decisions. I think he's a little too analytical based, and I don't trust any coach that leans that hard on that. I'd rather trust a guy who trusts his instincts. You know, now we've seen Kirby do some things that left you scratching your head at the end of the day, but it was more of a gut thing. That's going to happen. Not everything's going to pan out. And it does way more often for him than it doesn't. So I think Alabama seems to be trending in the wrong direction. When you cap both ends of your season with 2 of the worst losses in the country, losing to Florida State the way you did and getting hammered by Indiana at the end, 2 of the 3 worst conference losses for the SEC outside of conference, or at least 2 of the 4. I've got some questions about DeBoer and where that group is headed. Had they not upset Georgia and Athens last year, I think the conversation would be very, very different around DeBoer right now. I think his seat would be red hot. Now, he has found a way to win 2 out of 3 against Georgia. But I'm going to tell you that that seat will heat up quickly if Georgia goes in and beats Alabama next year. The Crimson Tide Nation is looking for a reason to turn on him, and lost to Georgia in the regular season at home would give them all they need. And I think things could unravel quickly for Alabama. The other side of that is, I think DeBoer's a pretty good coach. So, but I don't think they've got the talent they've had. But I'm not sure that anybody really does, because under NIL it's turned into a bidding war and everything else. So I think that's hurt some of the top teams' depth. And, you look at Georgia last year, they were in a little bit of a rebuilding mode. And part of that had to do with they didn't really have the returning depth and experience that they've been having. And so they had to overcome that. Now they overcame it to the tune of winning the SEC again. So not bad for rebuilding year. I think they're more primed to make a run this year by far than they were last year. So I do like Georgia. I like Texas being in there. Oklahoma's another one we hadn't talked about. Them and A&M both feel like they were, I don't know. Oklahoma felt a lot like Oregon. Great numbers, but there was something missing. And I'm not sure whether Oklahoma can answer that question yet or not. I can't really pick them to go back to the playoffs, because I'm going to leave them. I think there actually could be a pretty big flip in the playoff teams in the SEC this year. I think Georgia and Texas will be in there. I think there's the potential that Georgia could be the only returning team from the SEC. There will probably be a second one, but I would keep your eye on. There's a couple, I want to say Ole Miss, but I can't with that coaching staff flip. Maybe LSU's back. That to me feels like a strong possibility. I'm going to say A&M's back. I think LSU, A&M, Texas, Georgia, maybe an Ole Miss, and you could have somebody come out of nowhere like a Tennessee, who they were better than their schedule. Their record indicated last year. So if I had to pick a dark horse out of the SEC, and they don't play Georgia this year, so that helps a little bit. Tennessee might be the team to watch out of the SEC, of the teams that won't be getting the big talk, but could end up being there. We turn and look at the Big 12. Texas Tech, to me, when you've got coaching change at Utah, BYU, I think, could be back. Those two teams are going to be towards the top. I look for Arizona State to rebound this year. Iowa State, obviously, boy, talking about decimated. This is why we need some changes around the portal and everything. You cannot have the entire team jump to the portal and leave with the coach. You can't have that happen. And virtually that's what happened this past year with Iowa State. That's not a sustainable model. That's ridiculous. And you had a lot of kids from Penn State leave and go with James Franklin out of Virginia Tech. But, outside of, to me, your two front runners from last year. Texas Tech has shown the willingness to spend more money than anybody and the ability to get it right. They are like the polar opposite of what you saw at Florida State, where they got it wrong a lot. So we'll see, can they maintain it? Doing it once is one thing. Maintaining it is a different story. That's kind of what made one of the things with Indiana so impressive. It's one thing to jump up there, but then to follow it up is pretty impressive. So Texas Tech, BYU, with a team that came on, though, last year and kind of did it quietly, was Arizona. So I would say I'm going to have to. Texas Tech improved, but I'm going to go with Texas Tech, BYU as my front runners to get into the playoffs. And I do like the Big 12's opportunity maybe to get a second team in better than the ACC's. But they both could be a beneficiary of the fact that you could have a situation where the SEC and the Big Ten may both only get 3 teams in. That could happen next year. So I'll say BYU and Texas Tech with the 2 Arizona schools. Kind of keep an eye on them, maybe coming out of spring. When we get into the group of 5, I think first place we got to look is the 2 teams that went in there, Tulane and James Madison. James Madison has been able to maintain through coaching changes, as has Tulane. So I think both of those teams will be a bit of a have a shot to be playoff teams next year. And the question is, what do we have coming out of the new Pac? I'm not even sure what number they're going to go with. Pac-10, Pac-8, Pac-9, Pac-12, Pac something. Who comes out of there? And I think, and will they get any extra cachet because it's carrying the Pac, whatever number, name? But I think a team to really watch coming out of there is going to be Boise State again. Because I don't think, I think they're the best team in that conference next year. It will be interesting to see what they can get done. San Diego State had a little bit of a resurgence last year. So can they insert themselves into the conversation? It'll be interesting to see. But I think my team out of that conference right now going into the spring is going to be Boise State. What becomes very interesting is with Boise State out of the way, you had a couple teams really step it up last year, kind of unexpectedly out of the Mountain West Conference in UNLV in New Mexico. Now there's no Boise State in their way. There's no San Diego State to compete with. Can one of those teams make a run, specifically UNLV, to where they could grab that 1 or 2 spots for the group of 5? Although I think it's going to be hard-pressed because of all the hullabaloo around 2 teams getting in last year. It's going to be real. You're going to be really hard pressed to see 2 teams get in again this year. But here's the reality: SEC has added a 9th conference game. So you're going to have some records that might not be as high because you've got automatic losses. I mean, somebody's got to lose those ball games. So will you see the dominant teams continue to expand that, or are you going to see things tighten up a little bit more? Only time will tell on that. My guess would be it is going to put in peril. I don't think there's any way you get a 5th team in this year. I think there's just too many losses to be had in conference. So, and I don't know how much the committee really is even taking that into account. So we'll find out how that all plays out. The Big Ten, like I said, you might have a 4th team in from the Big Ten, but I think that's going to be more of a situation of circumstance in it having the Big Ten name behind it. And you could have the same thing happen with the SEC, where you get extra teams in because of the conference. Although what we saw when we broke the conferences down is that once you got past that upper crust of the Big Ten, there wasn't a lot of there. The Big 12 was actually better than the Big Ten was as a whole with the balance of it. So, we'll see how it plays out. But I think it's going to be very difficult to see 2 get in again this year. If we expanded to 16, I think the possibility of that happening would have gone up immensely. And it may be a situation where maybe they just need to start looking at, maybe we don't go to 16, maybe we just stay at 12, although I prefer 16, stay at 12, but give the group of 5 their own 12-team playoff. That might be the solution as well. Like I said, James Madison and Tulane have both shown the ability to carry on through coaching changes, and Tulane has maintained it about as well as anybody in that group. South Florida team on the rise, once again, also have a coaching change there. So, you know, the teams that were right there at the top of that last year, Navy, maybe keep an eye out for Navy. You know, not a lot of turnover. It's not a team that lives and dies through the transfer portal, obviously. They were pretty good last year. That could be a team to keep an eye out for if we're looking for a dark horse coming out of the group of 5. And that could make things pretty interesting. So that's just my thoughts coming out of you know, transfer portal time and heading into spring. What just my general impressions of who may be in a position to make playoffs runs next year. I think we'll see new blood. It happens every year. And I think the one place I don't think we'll see new blood is the Big Ten. I think that's going to be status quo. USC could be the dark horse if they get a 4th team in. I think you could see new blood. I think you will see new blood in the SEC. Miami could be status quo. With the ACC, a 2nd team likely would be new blood for the ACC, although it could be Clemson. BYU would be maybe my top pick outside of the SEC, because I think there's new blood coming in from the SEC. Don't know whether it's LSU or not. That would be my heavy leaning. Is that LSU would be the team that, matter of fact, I would say if there's a new team in for me, SEC, that's who it is. It's LSU. So we'll find out. That's what makes the season so much fun. Hope you enjoyed the little discussion about this past year, heading into next year. We'll catch you again on Friday with the next edition of the College Drive. Catch us Wednesday when we come back with the college pilgrimage, or the sports pilgrimage. We went away from college sports pilgrimage. So we're going to talk about the trip I made to Michigan and Michigan State. Enjoy your week, my friends. Have a good one. Hope you enjoyed the show.